to another episode of Man Space. Kunle and I are delighted and honored week after week to showcase and feature different men from different parts of the world, having different walks of life, to talk about how they are addressing their inner space, their outer space, and how together as a community of men and women supporting men, we can build an environment that is peaceful, harmonious, and uplifting so that men feel supported in a society that doesn't prioritize supporting men because men have naturally been raised to believe they don't need the support. So we want to break those stereotypes. We want to create those spaces and places. And as we get started, it is my absolute delight to introduce somebody who has become very, very close to me over the last few months, Brian Musa. Welcome and welcome to the Man Space.
Yes. Brian Muka at your service. Glad to be here.
Thank you. You are a healer. You work in your own inner place of peace and harmony, which then allows you to come from a place of joy and peace to help others find their inner peace and joy. What got you into this place, Brian? And how have you seen your whole life transform because you found this inner divine that you are able to connect and help others connect to?
Yeah. So I found myself seeking out stressful situations. That's probably a huge understatement. It started in high school. I was on stage a lot, stage fright. That's where it started. That progressed into skydiving with the U.S. Navy, and then also serving as a special operations officer, bomb technician, military free fall, and diver. That's where it was born. And then I didn't learn a lot of this until after my life's avalanche, my explosion, which I'm happy to talk about if you're interested. That's really where it started, right? So what I found was, so just imagine in your mind, if you could, the special operations guy, right? Stereotypical. And what I felt inside did not look like the outside. I felt like an imposter. I felt unworthy, and it didn't make any sense at all. My thoughts were liars, but I believed the lies. And even though I was qualified, a good leader, I manifested the early end of my military career. I was fired a couple weeks before my team was to deploy to Afghanistan with this line of diet. This line is where it all started. Brian, I've lost a lot of sleep over this, but you're not the man to take your team in Afghanistan. That was the best, worst day of my life. I felt my insides melt, and that was the start of the journey from being buried alive to now thriving. The cool thing that I did was I took notes along the way. I was inspired by Viktor Frankl, and I found some tools which I now teach. And as I look back in time, those 13 years ago, it was my shaman training. I needed to go through that to understand what being suicidal and PTSD was like. Um, so it went from worst day of my life to I was chosen for this mission to help other men come home and back into their hearts.
Wow. Thank you for sharing with us, Brian. That's been so amazing and mind-blowing at the same time. I know you mentioned the fact that you lost, and I felt at a point in time we all lose something. It could be business, it could be, I mean, some people might even lose their identity, and at that moment, I know what it feels, because personally too, I have experienced one loss at a point, or the other. I want you to talk us through what are those key things that any individual could, pick up, from what you did in that moment of finding oneself and then finding help along the line without any fear of being judged, or, well, I mean, and then also without one judging himself in that process. what are those steps that one can take to be free and then to be vulnerable enough to speak up when you need that help at that point in time, Brian?
Yeah. So I don't have an easy guide to that. What I have found is it's best to tell the truth. And if you're listening to this going through a divorce, a catastrophic injury, loss of your dream job like I did, it's going to be hard. And the word hard doesn't begin to describe how hard it is. And I don't have your specific path back to thriving, but you do. It's buried deep inside, it's buried underneath the heart. And I find through breath work and visualization, part of meditation, we can go look at your 5-year-old. I keep this on my desk for a reason. He already knows the way home. So all I have to do is be uncomfortable, dive directly into the fear, discomfort, the shame, the guilt, the not enoughness, whatever, and breathe it in. I try to keep it at a distance. So don't do what I did, right? So I'm going to save you 13 years here. When that feeling comes up, be one with it. The more I can merge with that feeling, the less leverage. So like in Muay Thai, if I'm kicking, the further away from the hips, the further I am from the fear, the more damage it creates. But if I hug the hips, the source of the fear, the discomfort, the shame and the guilt, there's no leverage. There's nothing to fight. And so now we can just let it out, like let it out, the tears and the vomiting sometimes. It's with the story that a 2-minute fear becomes a 2-hour, 2-day, 2-month, a 2-lifetime sentence. And so how can we let it go? And that's what I help my clients do. How do I fully feel it and release it? Repurpose it. Release or repurpose.
Mm-hmm. And that is powerful because the first step is becoming self-aware. Second step is learning to manage and channel that feeling, right? And then through the channeling of that feeling, then find your peace and your freedom. And so you're taking life experience and growing through it, growing because of it, instead of growing away and apart from it. And I love how you talk about it, Brian. You mentioned earlier on that there was the avalanche, the story you would like to tell. Why don't you go ahead and share that story? Because I believe that'll give context to everybody.
Yeah, so let me back up a minute. I went to Drexel University. I studied engineering. I raised my right hand, and I was one of 17 college men selected for this special program. It's called Explosive Ordnance Disposal. It's kind of like the Hurt Locker, except we have better hair, and I have to give the Army a little crap from time to time since we were Navy. But I got to do that. I couldn't believe. Did you hear that language? I couldn't believe. And sometimes I say this, it was unbelievable that I was getting paid to jump out of airplanes. Some of the best shooting schools in the world, Secret Service missions all over. Yeah, I felt like James Bond minus the contract killing part. I was, we're learning how to save lives, how to counter and play chess with bomb builders, and it was fascinating. It was both cerebral and I loved it. And it was my boyhood dream to do that. My first deployment, this is when we were in Iraq, and I didn't know what I didn't know. And also, we didn't really know how to lead junior officers either. And so it was like this perfect storm. My chief, my senior enlisted, his dad was dying of cancer. And I couldn't stand the thought of Aaron getting killed on an improvised explosive device, thinking about his dad that was dying. So I sent him home. And I had essentially sealed my fate in my community. 4 weeks later, I was reassigned night watch captain from platoon commander, and I spent the next 4.5 months in the desert feeling like I had leprosy. I took a marathon training in the middle of a war zone. Like that's what I was doing to get away from the discomfort, the pain that I was in. And I was on a run one day. And I was probably 10 miles into this run in the middle of nowhere, Iraq. And I had the thought, what if I don't come back? I just kept running and running and running. And I stood with my toes over the edge for longer than I'd like to admit. And I finally realized, like, I can't do that. I won't do that. I have a family. I have a mission. Man, I must have a much higher purpose than this. And I ran back. And it was the hardest 4.5 months of my life. And I'm so grateful for it now when stuff comes up with my clients. We can go deep. And I realized it was the most special mission I'd ever been on, is to help people choose to live, get back in their heart through life's major catastrophe. So I got another chance. I took another team. We were 4 weeks from deploying to Afghanistan to support the U.S. Army Rangers. And my boss, Chris, called me into his office. He was haggard. He had really, really dark lines under his eyes. And he said, Brian, I've lost a lot of sleep over this. You're not the man to take your team to Afghanistan. And I can remember weeping. Like I had been all in. I'd been willing to lay my life on the line for my men. And it didn't seem fair. I didn't do anything wrong. I just forgot to believe in myself. And I didn't know how to defend myself as, a junior officer. Like, what I let happen to me was, I had a few guys that decided, myself included, that I didn't deserve to be in the community. And, we put together a plan. I would make mistakes and they would highlight them. And then next thing you know, I was asked to leave the community. I didn't have to leave the Navy, but there's nothing else in the Navy I wanted to do. So thankfully, they had a great therapist. Her name was Talia Gershon. She's my now adopted Jewish auntie, and she created a plan for me to put me back together. I'm going to share this one piece, and then we can move. I was journaling, and I was like sending them to her as an email, and she's like, "Wow, you really know how to write. Where are you getting this stuff from?" I don't know. I read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, and I was trying to find some meaning. Here's what I made sense of, and this is just how I'm metabolizing this. Because I've been in therapy for 30 years. I've never seen stuff like this before. It's amazing. You got something, kid. Keep going. And so, Fear Sherpa was born, and that's really like where I started to find some meaning. And maybe I can guide other people through life's avalanches and explosions.
Wow, so inspirational. And I think the you that we see now is it's the authenticity of the story, and I can see the originality coming from the depth of your heart, and you are making us connect with this story, and you took us through it as if we were there. I really want to thank you for doing that, and for as many people who are watching who will also learn from your story. And it's all about finding meaning, just like you mentioned before you close. Life, it's all about meaning. Emotions equals meaning, meaning equals emotions. And by the time we in our world begin to delve deep into that, finding purpose, finding meaning, releasing purpose in things that we go through, maybe we'll now begin to see, greater things out of the things that we have lost sometimes, just like you did, and digging deep to find the power and the energy to keep moving in spite of what we have been through. And I feel we've had a couple of guests on this show who we have, spoken about how there is a construct in the society about men. And I'm sure you have worked with a lot of, men. And one of the common, denominators is the fact that men find it so difficult to speak up. What do you think is responsible for these, and how do you think we can overcome this in a society whereby we have a lot of men who will, in spite of that construct that the society is putting forward to them, who can come out freely and then talk about and what they are going through, to find help from someone like you and from other people who are doing similar things that you're doing?
Yeah, yeah. Thankfully, there are other folks doing similar things. What you just mentioned, for men to speak up freely, depends on what context. Um, the first and foremost is having a group of men. I think that there's just some things in the deep, dark night of the soul type stuff that would terrify our spouses and our wives, and those types of things. Just, I don't know that's all. I don't know that everything that men carry is appropriate to just freely share. I think in asking that, um, most can't handle it, you know? And so having a safe space where you can truly full send, here's the ugly, messy mess. And this is me. And to be like really received in that, because it takes a lot of training to listen, to really hear the pain, the anguish, the shame, the guilt in that. And at the end of that, like, I love you, brother. I see you. I'm a witness to where you are right now. And the reminder that you are worthy of love in this moment. Like, it has to do with having listeners that are safe. Because otherwise we've been taught and conditioned like it's not okay. And like, go ahead, how are you feeling? And they try that. We try that, get our heads cut off. That's how it's been, at least in my experience.
So it's interesting you say certain things men carry in their heart deep down is not shareable. And so it begs the question, if it's not shareable, then where do they turn for support and healing? Because women feel the same. There are certain things done to women, and women go through certain things. And when they believe it's not shareable, it becomes a secret, a dirty little secret. And then that is what destroys women. And so over time, we have empowered women to step into their own power and speak about it. There is so much support, in spite of the world not always embracing it. Women have support systems in place today to make that happen. What can we do to create similar, not the same, similar avenues for men to feel supported in a very masculine way? Because we do not want to emasculate men either. We need for them to stay in their masculine energy, in their masculine power, and still have the opportunity to speak up and seek that help without losing a sense of who they are.
Two things on that, right? So it's my invitation for men to find groups of men that they can really uh, just be with, whether they're working on cars or going for a walk. The way that men do this is different than how women do this, right? We got to be doing something else. I have a group called Base Camp for any of the special operators out there. This is uh, a great home, a den to come and lay your hat and take a breath in that community. So I'm speaking from that experience. The other part to this, so in addition to the group, I don't know about you guys, but I needed permission to say this next thing. I can remember a crucial conversation I had with a partner, romantic partner of mine, and I was crying and I was feeling sensitive about something. No, the poor little. I'm like, stop right there. I was a warrior in the United States Navy, and I'm in touch with my emotions, and it's one of my superpowers. That's not okay. And so to be able to express emotion and then know, yeah, this is what I'm feeling. This is who I am. I'm not open. I'm not open to being ridiculed. In force protection, in keeping things safe, we would call it being a hard target. Now, if I was wishy-washy on, yeah, you're right, I'm not being a real man, uh, just adopt the posture that this is evolved masculinity. I'm a warrior, and I hurt sometimes, and I need to express that. I don't need you to do anything different. I just need to be witnessed in this. And I don't tolerate anything less than that. And now it's the person on the receiving end choice. What do you do next?
Wow.
How do you guys feel about this? Is a discussion. I mean,
So I come from
absolutely.
a man's world. I've worked with men. I've been in the trenches with men from a business perspective through horrendous situations, including like 9/11 and Katrina, right? And men do deal with things differently, but supporting them is very different from supporting a woman.
100%.
And so when women are willing to step into that space, we have to be comfortable in allowing that masculine energy to flow and keep that space masculine without bringing our femininity in, out of respect and honoring that space.
Yes. And I think in that space, the biggest thing that triggers me and our guys is being fixed. Oh, you shouldn't feel that way. What? And the invitation. Hey, just, a gentle invite maybe to look at this in a different way. What if we looked at it this way? We really don't like being told what to do, we like agency. And if we're told, hey, you need to go to therapy, you need to go to your men's group, like that's not going to be met well. Whereas, hey, why don't you hang out with Jack and Tom? Those are good guys. You guys probably have some things to talk about. So even just the invitation to make changes or even go to meetings, it has a different frame.
So true, Brian. And you brought so much energy to this discussion, and I'm so glad. And everyone who will watch this also will testify to that. As we begin to round off, I will want you to let us know how people can reach you and to benefit from what you do, and to also get this, energy as we are getting right now. And even more than that, how to find a way, find their superpowers, and then connect with themselves through you.
Yeah, the easiest thing right now is on LinkedIn, of Brian Muka on LinkedIn. And then if you want to dig in a little deeper, I have a book available on Amazon. I wrote it for you. It's called Your Secret Superpower, Tame Fear to Thrive. So those are probably the two things I would invite. I'm also on Facebook too, but I don't go on there very much anymore. So LinkedIn's my primary, along with Instagram. Brian J. Muka is my handle on Instagram. If you want to shoot me a message, maybe let me know what resonated for you. I would love to hear it.
Thank you, Brian. It has been such an honor. Appreciate everything you do, and appreciate the fact that you're helping the masculine energy connect with the divine within it, so that it can find a place of peace and a place of calm in its own way without losing its masculinity. And that itself is the gift we need our men to have. It crosses culture, right? It is not a religious thing. It is not a spiritual thing. It is truly a personal thing. And regardless of what people believe, every man deserves that. And for the work you do in that space, I am very grateful, because as women, we need men who are connected with themselves so that we too can have a harmonious existence. It doesn't even have to be any romantic relationship. We coexist, we work, we socialize. So the world becomes a better place when we are in harmony with ourselves. And thank you for helping men find that for themselves. And to our audience out there, if you are going through inner turmoil, step away from that and take a look at yourself. Look inside and assess what your struggles are, and find the right person to help you heal. Nobody can heal you, but somebody can guide you through your own healing process.
Amen.
So find that guide, just like Michael Jordan had a coach. We all need a coach. Find your coach for your inward journey. And in that process, find your place of peace. And I turn this over to Kunle to wrap this up, and take it away, Kunle.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kaz and Brian. Before we go, we need one sentence or two from Brian, the words of wisdom before we finally call it a day on the show? Just dig deep right there and bring it out right now for those who are watching. Brian.
When it feels chaotic, when it feels uncertain, just do this. And one more. That has saved my life so many times. When in doubt, breathe deep. Breathe out and do nothing. Be still.
Thank you so much, Brian. That was so explosive. That was explosive. So if you're watching, just do that. If you're going through anything chaotic, okay, anything that you need help, just, breathe. Remember to breathe, just like I tell people sometimes. So, and that's the man's space. That's what we have for you on today's edition. As always, we come with great people who will share their experience, who will also share insights on the man's space. And this edition is no exemption to that. We thank Brian for coming around, and we thank you for watching. And we ask you to stick around to and Dr. Kaz and I will be having great people come around to do this time and time again. Thank you for sticking with us. Stay blessed.